We're going to add it at the end. Oh,
Well, good. We're live. We're live. We're live. Hello, hello. We are live, and I am here with amazing Claudia, who I actually met through one of the collaborations events that we've done. And as you guys know, anyone who's watching on my Facebook, one of my pillars of success is collaboration, right? So my philosophy is all about 80% is mindset, somatics, embodiment, all of that together. And then 10% aligned action, inspired aligned action, and 10% is collaboration. So I met Claudia a few months ago at one of the events. I can't even remember which one it was now, but it really doesn't matter. And we felt that there was some energy and connection. So we wanted to kind of see how we can collaborate. And here we are.
yeah.
So we are starting with a StreamYard today. Claudia is new to the StreamYard, which is very cool. So I can show her a little bit around that. But most importantly, we will be talking about women over 40, amazing and fabulous, and how we can create our own rules in life. Okay, so let me just introduce you quickly to Claudia. First of all, she just has this absolutely incredible energy about her that draws people to her. That's what I got from the moments that we met. And also, Claudia is very determined and she's very passionate about helping women to really let go of the guilt and obligations so they can free themselves and live the life on their own terms. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Claudia maybe introduce a little bit more and tell us a little bit how do you help women to let go of the guilt and obligations?
Well, Katja, I just want to say thank you. I'm really excited about having this opportunity to connect together because, yeah, there was a really lovely connection between the two of you. Thank you for that introduction. That feels really good. And I would say we are mirrors of each other because I know that that is true about you, that people are very attracted to you and your energy and what you put out into the world. So I'm glad to be a part of your world. So, I want to just say a little bit about that. So before you and I got here, we were talking about like the thing that really you want to talk about. And the reason I want to talk about guilt and obligation is because I was that person. I always tell my clients that, like any struggles that you have, I struggled with all those things and I learned a way through the years of my own personal journey and then all training to really overcome them because my experience for myself and also in working with clients is how much guilt and obligation holds them from making the changes they think they can make. And I don't care if the women I've talked to extremely successful in the outer world, it doesn't matter. There's still inside this idea that I can't do this because of some idea I'm supposed to be this way, or I'm the daughter of blah, 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 and this is how they do things. So a lot of the work I do with my clients, because I've done it with myself, is really examining these ideas that we hold and we've held to be true, which are not true. We've just held them for so long. We've had so many people reflecting that that's how it has to be. That's who you are. And so we believed it. So that really is my passion. When I first started on this journey, I remember somebody saying to me is that you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing somebody else's reflection of who you think you should be. And that's the work that I do with my clients, is really helping them to see in the mirror who they truly are and who they want to be versus the idea that they have of themselves. And that is such a powerful shift when women make that connection. And I was talking with a client last week, and she's going through a really hard divorce. But she had this idea that there were certain things that because of the programming she had, she'd stopped asking questions to attorneys that she had hired because she didn't think she could ask the questions. She's a smart woman. But the programming that she was holding was stopping her from being able to verbalize and hold people accountable that she had hired. So the work I do with my clients is really helping them bring to the surface what's really going on versus what they think is going on. So I use a couple of practices to really help people uncover stories, because we all have a story. Byron Katie asks these 3 questions about really, when we tell ourselves a story, one of the things she says is to ask yourself, is that true? And then the other question is, after that, is to say, is that absolutely true? And then third question is, who would I be without that? So I really help my clients look at what are these beliefs, patterns that we're holding to be true, and then really being able to examine them. And then I use, for me, the work that I have found to be extremely helpful is emotional freedom technique, which really helps to clear the neurological patterning, which we put in because we keep telling the same story. It really is about really changing the programming. So that's where I start with people.
I love that. I love that. I love that. And I love Byron Katie. Those 3 questions are so transformational. To me, it's so interesting is when you start, at least when I started on my personal developmental journey years ago, when I looked at those questions, I couldn't answer them, right? So because we're so blocked and so closed and so conditioned, so we can't even sometimes discern what is true, what is absolute true, right? So who would I be without it? You can't even fathom to get there.
Yes.
So if someone is in that situation where they're like, well, I don't even know, how do I discern? What would you tell them?
Well, that's such a great question. And it's such an important thing what you said, because I'm telling you, this client that I was working with, she's like, no, I already handled that. Like, I did the work on it. I'm like, okay, but I can tell there's more there. I can tell you're really upset. And one of the ways I know is that, like, in working with people, sometimes there's a feeling of either they're shut down around it, they can't, like, it's completely closed, or there's a big react, like there's a lot of anger, or there's a lot of sadness. So any one of those things tells me that there's still something going on. We're still attached to that. So when we can't answer the question, is that true? What I usually have people do, and this is where I find tapping to be so powerful, is I just tell people, tell me the story. Just tell me the story as you remember it, to the best that you can. And when people start telling the story, they start hearing themselves tell the story. What I notice, particularly with women, because that's my market, could be true with men as well, but that's not who I focus on. What I know with women is that many times when something is negative or doesn't sound good, and we've been maybe on some kind of journey or not on a journey, we think, oh, that sounds bad. I don't want to say that. Or it sounds bad about somebody, and I like them, and I wouldn't want to say something bad about them. So that's why I love EFT, emotional freedom technique, because I just have them tell me the story. And then sometimes when they can't tell me the story, I'll tell them the story for them. And they're like, how did you know that? I'm like, oh, I've been there. I know you're pissed off. I know you're mad. I know you're frustrated. I know you feel you weren't treated fairly. Now, I'm not saying I agree with any of that, but I know that's what they're holding. Mm-hmm. So I let them tell the story, and then I can tell when things are missing. because I've been doing this a while. I'm sure you can identify with that. And then I let them feel what happens next. And that's when I see people start to see, oh my gosh, I have been doing that. Or I do feel this heaviness in my heart. I am really angry. I am really pissed off. I didn't really want to say it because it sounds so bad. It sounds so petty. We have to own it. You know, they say that which isn't brought to the light doesn't heal.
Mm-hmm.
So all that stuff that we're burying and think it's too mean, it's too petty, it's too selfish, it's too narcissistic, whatever the label is we've given to it that says we can't bring it up to the surface because of what it says about us, is how we actually get better. So that's a big part of the work I do with my clients, is really helping bring up the stuff that they've pushed down and put in the basement. I liken it to, if you have a basement or a garage or a junk drawer, we throw all that crap in there and we're like, oh my God, just close the door. I don't want to deal with it. And then the more stuff we put in there, the more we don't want to deal with it. And that's the stuff that needs to come up for us to be free, joy, flourish. It's not, I've heard one spiritual teacher say, it's not like putting like a happy face on an empty gas tank. Oh, I know it's an empty gas tank. I'm just going to put a happy face on it. You have to get gas. And it's the same thing with us. We can't just put a happy face on something because we want to say we're done with it. We haven't done the work. We're not done. And to me, that's empowering because it's on us. Because that person out there, they may or may not change. But that's what I tell my clients, is that's what's empowering. You holding onto a story or anger about your ex-husband, about your mom, about your brother, your dad, does not empower you. It actually holds you down. And I find that there's sometimes confusion about that idea of forgiveness. And that's like really something I talk to my clients about, because in forgiveness, there's so much healing. And sometimes people will say, well, I want to forgive them because I don't want to condone their behavior. Like, forgiveness is not something we do for another person. We do it for ourselves. We do it to free ourselves up. It's not giving somebody else permission to treat us badly. It's giving ourselves permission to heal. Many times there's people in our lives that we end up saying, maybe they're not in our highest good to have in our lives any longer. That's okay. That's forgiveness. We forgive ourselves for participating in a relationship like that. And we allow ourselves to then move on to the relationship, to the situation, to the employer, to what's next for us, with more freedom, with more joy. So I so appreciate the opportunity to go into these conversations, because I think these things get confused on why people don't want to forgive, or why we want to hold on to the anger, the guilt, that obligation. But it only holds us back and keeps us stuck.
So I have a question for you, and I have a little different take on forgiveness.
Sure.
And I don't believe that it's 100% necessarily to forgive everyone. And I agree with you, forgiveness is for us, not for them. But there is a certain situation where you can move on without the forgiveness. But to do that again, you'll have to excavate some of the stuff, like you said, that is hiding in those drawers that we throw them in the garage, in the basement, and really explore it and really bring it to the light, like you said, so you can heal it, right?
Yeah.
So, but on top of that, what we're talking about really bringing up to what we're afraid to face, because this society, and if you think about it, we're so busy. Why are we busy? A lot of times we're so busy because we're afraid to face ourselves, our fears, what's not healed, and so on and so forth. But also, there is a flip side to that is, and I call it spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
And spiritual bypassing is when it's all about positivity. Everything is positive. Everything is there. So we're not like, let's not put our attention and focus to negative. 100%. No, we don't want to stay in a negative. But it's important for us to really, not really excavate, but look at those feelings, understand them, then release them. Like, and Claudia helps through emotional freedom technique, EFT or tapping. So different way people, call that, and other techniques as well. But it's one of her favorite, like she said.
Yeah.
But what do you take on the term of spiritual bypassing, and what do you think about it?
I love that term, actually, spiritual bypassing. I understand. It's a familiar term to me in my circles as well. And I would agree with you. And it goes back to what I was saying before, is like people wanting to stick a happy face in an empty tank and just say, oh, it's okay. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that about forgiveness either. And that idea that we can just move on without looking at things does not create a deep sense of healing. It creates a sense of a gap, I would say, that you can't just ignore the last 20 years that happened and just say, okay, I'm going to move on, without acknowledging what happened, what was the effect of it. Because those 20 years, those 20 days, 20 months, whatever it is, had an effect. And if we don't acknowledge the repercussions of it, we can't heal from it. I'm in complete agreement with that. And there is a guy that I used to listen to, and he would talk about you can't get to Boston from Chicago if you're in New York. Right? So if you say I'm in New York, but you're really in Chicago, you're not going to get to where you're going. You have to be where you say you are. And I would say a lot of times, most of us, when we begin this journey, we don't know where we are. We think we're maybe a little more evolved, maybe a little bit more self-aware. We all have these blind spots. We're not bad people. And it's not because we're not perhaps trying. I know that I'm sure, but as a coach, the value of coaching, right, is that on our own, we can only see so much. And that is the value of having a coach to go, what about this? Oh, I didn't want to look at that. I'm like, well, you got to look at that, because if you don't look at that, here's what you're missing out on. You don't get to fully experience how alive you can be. You're going to get that feeling of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You're going to have a lot of not really experiencing movement forward. There's that feeling of, I don't know why I do things, but nothing really changes. That's the inner game, right? So I love that you bring up spiritual bypass, because it is that willingness. I think the view most people don't want to take is to go within. And I would agree with you. The busyness, all this scrolling, spending hours on Netflix, whether it's alcohol, whether it's food, whether it's, shopping, any one of these distractions keeps us from going within and being able to feel. And feeling is something we cannot do unless we're willing to look within. So
that brings me to the next question, and I love that, because so how do we, especially in this crazy technological advances world, we're constantly connected. So how do we go within? let's say someone watching it right now and they're not quite ready where to start. They're not quite ready to look into the coach because everyone at a different,
Yeah.
stages of their development and growth and everything. So I would love to give them some practical tips of where would they start? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I know for me, when I first started my journey, I was extremely anxious. I could not sit still. Um, so much mental consternation. There was always a story going on in my head. I was far from peace. And I would say one of the easiest things somebody can do is take a walk, go outside, be in nature, because these devices, this device, all this electronics keeps us so disconnected.
And addicted. That's dopamine and addicted too, right? So the more we use it, our brain wants more of it.
Exactly. I mean, these things are very smart. They're set up in a particular way to make us pick this thing up, whether we want it or not. Like, why did I just pick this thing up? I don't even need anything on here. And then you find yourself on some kind of social media that like, and I've been here for an hour now. I had a friend who, I'm not on TikTok, but I have a friend who was on TikTok, and she said she'd get messages and TikTok would say, you've been on here long enough. And I thought, oh my gosh, So my big suggestion in this, I tell this to my clients as well, start by going outside. Because when you go outside and look around, and I'm going to tell you, go outside without your phone, is go outside and just, no matter what the weather, go outside and just be there, walk around the block. And it'll help you if you're feeling that kind of, really being on social media or being in electronics, it makes us much more agitated. Things are moving so fast. We think we have to be fast. So if there's a caffeine thing going on, you started with caffeine, there's a caffeine midday. There's a lot of extra adrenaline going through the body. The way to slow down is go outside. Nature is slow. That is a great place to start. And all you have to do is walk around the block. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to walk for an hour or hours. Start. And this is what I tell really my clients when I start working them, is that it really is small changes over time will absolutely change the trajectory of our life. People want to do these big things. So I've worked a lot with people with weight loss, and people want to have they want to lose, I want to lose 100 pounds, in 2 months. Well, all right, that's unrealistic. Maybe there's some weight loss drug that's going to tell you that's going to happen. I guarantee it's not going to change your life, and it's not going to keep it off if you could do that. You got to start making small changes over time. You will absolutely have results that will make a lifetime of difference. When I don't run any longer, but when I started, I wanted to run for a little while, and I started with just doing a block. And so I would run for a block, and then I ran 2 blocks, and then I ran 3 blocks, and then I actually could run. So it's the same thing for me, in its analogy for these changes. You want to start to make changes? Start. And don't wait for tomorrow when you're not so busy. It's today. Always, I talk to my clients, it'll always sound easier to start tomorrow. But tomorrow is going to be the same thing. You're going to be in the same place, and you're going to be, I'm too busy. I got too many people who need me. 5 minutes is not going to make a difference. Drive your car, wherever you're going. Get out of the car. Walk around the block. I frequently do this, that when I'm going somewhere and I have an appointment, I'll just walk the area for a little while before I go into wherever I'm going. It gives me a sense of the neighborhood. It gives me a sense of something new, wakens my senses. Like, oh, they have different trees here. They have different flowers. Oh, that's a unique house. When you change your environment, you awaken your senses. You awaken to a new experience, and then you're open to new ideas. So I would say that is the best thing that you can do to start.
That's awesome. Fantastic. So, and we covered a lot, and I wanted to kind of bring it back and loop it back into the topic which we're like, intended to talk about, right? So, 40 and fabulous, and how do we, rewrite the rules of our lives? So, what would be your parting words to someone who feels that they've been living by, or just maybe realized now watching this, or anything, maybe they just kind of thinking, I've been living 40 plus years, right? So, and who have I been living for? Have I been living for me or someone else? What would you recommend for them? Not even where to start, but how to break those rules and create their own rules.
I love the question. Well, I'm going to tell you that it starts with going outside, because when you go outside, you start to think about things a little differently. We're programmed to keep doing. We're programmed not to stop. And so for those of us, over 40, really want to step into being fabulous and rewrite the rules of our life, it means that I'm willing to do one thing every day that is about me. And this is really where I start with my clients. It's where I had to start with myself, right? Is that it can feel very selfish to focus on oneself, especially for women. We're programmed to be caretakers. We're good caretakers. It's part of our role, I believe, as women. But learning to be a caretaker who also cares for ourselves, I call it, right? It's divine selfishness. It's willingness to be divinely self-caring, because our inner self flourishes with care and attention. Just like when we shine on another person, right? That one person in the room who nobody pays attention to, she's, always kind of like, I shouldn't talk to anybody, she's just not that comfortable. You go over and you talk to her, she's like, oh my gosh, thank you for seeing me. We need to do that for ourselves. Thank you for seeing me. And so I have a very simple exercise that I do with my clients is it's a Louise Hay exercise. Maybe you know it. And she would say is that you look in the mirror and you look yourself in the eyes and you say, I love you exactly the way you are. And most of my clients don't want to do that, because that is not usually what they say when they look at themselves in the mirror. Usually they look in the mirror and they say, oh my God, these wrinkles. Oh my gosh, I think I got a gray hair. Oh my gosh, when did this come? We're so judgmental of ourselves.
I love mirror work, and thank you for bringing it to my attention, because I kind of stepped away from it, and it's good to revisit. But I remember when I just started before, it was very confronting. It was very confronting and uncomfortable. You look in yourself in your eyes, you're looking into your soul, and you're saying that you love yourself. It, like, for some people it feels silly. For me, it was very confronting.
Yeah.
And because you're saying something, looking yourself in the eye, and the reason it was confronting for me, because I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
And most of us don't. And like you said, apply to yourself. Thank you for, the rule of thank you for seeing me, right? So thank you, really start seeing yourself. And I often say you can't pour from an empty cup. Yes, we are born caregivers. Most of us are. That's in our genetics. That's been through generation to generation. But how can we really take this great care of ourselves so we can actually pour more and give more, right? So, and not from an empty cup, and not running, like you were saying, on an empty gas, right? On an empty tank. Yeah.
Yeah,
Lovely.
so true. And it's, one of the analogies that's frequently used is they say when you're flying, right, is that put the oxygen, if you're flying with a small child, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And that's really what this work is about. You have to put the oxygen on yourself first. Otherwise, you cannot assist somebody else. And that's why I say it's the most unselfish thing you can do to care for yourself. Because if you don't, somewhere down the line, somebody else will have to care for you. Because years of neglect, and frequently people find me when they're kind of like, they're starting to get a health scare. They suddenly realize, I've been taking care of myself for so long, I don't feel good. Taking care of yourself is really the most unselfish act, because then you know you're ensuring down the road your children, grandchildren, friends, whoever, they don't have to take care of you.
So I want to say, so rule number one, or breaking a rule of number one, put yourself first. And it's so hard for women to do. So hard for women to do, right?
Yes, it is. And we wonder, why would that be so hard? But years of programming. Years of programming.
Years of programming. And one thing I wanted to say, that's not your fault. Nobody's fault. So I say that it's not your fault that whatever way you were brought up, right? So whatever is the ways that you were brought up, because it's a years of programming. And often you definitely need somebody to help you, to assist you with that. And I'm not saying you cannot do it yourself. You totally can. It could take longer, but you also need to know where to start. And that's why we're bringing that to your attention, and see maybe that will spark some, insight, where you will say, oh, okay, that's a great reminder, especially during the holiday season. Nourish yourself, right? So we are so busy getting gifts and setting up dinners and parties and attending parties and all of that stuff. Most of the time, I'm very fortunate that I'm a very small town, and I don't have that hustle and bustle right now, which I enjoy tremendously, right? So I miss it sometimes, but most of the time I don't. And I don't go to too many parties either. So, but when I'm not saying don't do what you're comfortable with, right? So, but what I'm trying to say is nourish yourself, right? So even if you go into the party, even when you get in those gifts, did you put your name on that list of gifts?
Indeed.
What are you giving yourself?
Indeed.
Right?
And frequently the gift that's needed is time
Yes.
for oneself. And for anyone who's interested, I put together 3 strategies for women to really own their yes and own their no, so that it's a guide, it's written down. So if somebody is, listening and you're kind of feeling like, well, I should do this, I would love to share it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually my next question, is like, I knew that you had some gifts, so tell us a little bit. So it's like owning your yes, how to say yes, how to say no, and own it. That's another thing. We women, so easy for us to say yes to somebody else, but not yes to yourself. And also, we often saying yes to something we actually want to say no to.
Exactly. And that's why I put this together, because it really, and this is actually how you and I connected, because you were like, yes. Because this really is such an important practice. And when you get this, it really has the power to change your life. And what I like about I put it together because I know it works, is that when you ask the questions that I take people through in this guide and do the exercise, it really has you thinking in a different way, and it has you asking yourself questions the next time the situation shows itself. And all day long, we're in situations that we are having to say yes or no to, and say yes or no to ourselves with our time during the day. So I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to seeing this guide. So definitely I will put it above the description here. So please download did. It's a gift from Claudia. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you so much for being here. I
delight.
loved
Gotcha,
it.
thank you.
And thank you for bringing amazing reminder. And I believe that when we put ourselves first, when we truly love ourselves, everything else changes in our world. But we're also human beings and we forget. So by me having this conversation, and last time I had somebody, we talked about compassion, right? So an empathy and compassion. Today we talked about importance of breaking the rules or creating your own rules, right? So and hopefully that was beneficial for you as well. So do follow Claudia. I know that I'll be bringing Claudia on again, probably in a month or so, because she has some incredible things happening. She's created this absolutely fabulous program, but during the holidays, she's just, letting everyone enjoy the families and everything else. And then in New Year, I definitely will be bringing Claudia back on so she can share with you how you can possibly work with her, or again, looking at maybe even joining her programs or anything like that. But first, I would ask you just go and follow Claudia on Facebook, download this free gift for yourself and start there and get to know her. Because when you get to know her like I did, you would want to be in her world. Okay?
Thank you,
So
Katya, for that.
thank you
Thank
so
you so much.
much for being here.
Thank
Okay?
you,
So
Katya.
thank you.